Amplify is back. Don't miss the chance to improve every part of your business by connecting with industry experts, hearing best practices from top dealerships, and learning how to optimize your system for profitability at every turn. You don't want to miss the Amplify experience that is designed to help your dealership improve.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News here in Detroit.
And I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, a judge says EV charger funding must go forward in some states. Continental sees tariffs eating into profits. And workers at a GM plant in Mexico consider joining a new union. Plus, Lucid Motors' interim CEO discusses the array of challenges automakers are facing.
The industry right now is in a difficult situation with a lot of challenges, supply chain issues, but then tariffs come on top, and then other things like the dispute with China on rare earths and all those kind of things. The whole industry is grappling.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry.
A U.S. judge temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's administration from withholding funds awarded to 14 states, including California, New York, Illinois, and Washington, for electric vehicle charger infrastructure. U.S. District Judge Tana Lin in Seattle ruled that the states were likely to succeed in a lawsuit alleging that the federal government was illegally withholding billions of dollars awarded to states for building EV charging stations. The U.S. Transportation Department in February suspended the $5 billion EV charging program, which was part of former President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. The department also rescinded prior approval of states' spending plans. Lin's ruling, however, did not apply to the District of Columbia, Minnesota, and Vermont, which also sued over the funding rescission. They did not provide evidence that they would suffer immediate harm as a result of the Transportation Department decision.
Continental, the giant tire company, lowered a profitability target for the year due to rising costs from U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, as the supplier forges ahead with a plan to dismantle itself. Continental now sees an adjusted profit margin of as much as 11% for the fiscal year from as high as 11.5% previously. The changes reflect lower revenue at its ContiTech industrial unit and the impact of U.S. levies on the tire business. The Aumovio car parts division is not included in the outlook because of its planned spin-off in September. Aumovio makes products including sensors, brake systems, and displays. It has struggled in recent years with high investment needs and stiff competition. As a standalone company, it targets an adjusted profit margin of as high as 8% by the end of the decade, up from 2.5% last year. Aumovio plans cost reductions and is in the process of cutting 6 factories by 2027 to end up with 50 globally.
Workers in General Motors plant in San Luis Potosi in central Mexico will vote this week on joining a new union that is free of government and management influence, as independent unions in Mexico's auto industry gain traction. The 6,500 workers have been without representation since 2023 after the former union failed to meet certification requirements under the USMCA and was replaced by an internal workers' council run by GM. Workers at the plant started voting in an election between independent union Cintia and rival union Carlos Leon. The vote, which runs through June 27th, comes as labor struggles have intensified in Mexico ahead of the USMCA renegotiation next year.
And Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD has slowed its production and expansion pace in recent months by reducing shifts at some factories in China and by delaying plans to add new production lines. That's according to a Reuters report citing 2 people with knowledge of the matter. The decisions are a sign that robust sales growth could be slowing at the world's largest electric car maker as it grapples with rising inventory even after offering deep price cuts in China's cutthroat auto market. BYD has canceled night shifts and reduced output by at least a third at some of its factories, said the people who declined to be identified because the matter is private. And those are today's headlines. So, Jamie, a judge says EV charger funding must go forward in some states. How will this ruling affect EV infrastructure development in states involved?
Well, it could advance it. It's probably not the end of the end of the line. I'm sure this dispute will go on. I suspect the transportation department will push back and appeal. They don't want to spend that money because they want to use it to help offset tax cuts in the big budget bill. So we'll see, but certainly these states have made their case, and they're counting on the EV funding. And I would imagine those other states will refile and try to mimic, the filings they showed, to say there will be some imminent loss financially, and we'll see how that goes forward. I'm sure the battle is far from over.
Gotcha. Coming up, Lucid Motors interim CEO updates us on the rollout of the brand's Gravity crossover. That's next on Daily Drive.
Daily Drive listeners like you have access to the lowest price for Automotive News Congress 2025 on September 11th.
The event is where the industry's biggest players tackle its toughest challenges. Congress attendees don't just follow the industry, they lead it.
This year's featured speakers include Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair Yusin Chung and General Motors CEO Mary Barra.
We are investing in America. We're creating jobs. That's creating IP in this country. And I think, the United States needs to lead in key technologies.
Join us to gain the insights and connections needed to steer your business through massive change.
To get the lowest price for the event, go to autonews.com/events, select Auto News Congress, and type in the discount code Daily Drive, one word, all caps. We'll see you in September in Detroit.
Amplify 2025 is right around the corner. Are you ready? Join the industry's leading innovators this August 18th and 19th at the Ritz-Carlton Dallas Las Colinas and be part of the event that will reshape retail automotive. At this 2-day experience, you'll explore new strategies and fresh ideas for driving real growth at your dealership. Choose from 9 hands-on workshops, each designed to deliver practical insights across every department. Gain forward-thinking perspectives during our expert-led keynote session and leave with actionable takeaways to implement right away. And it's not all business. Amplify also gives you the chance to connect with fellow professionals on the greens at TPC Las Colinas, the iconic course that hosted the PGA Tour's Byron Nelson Championship for 35 years. Secure your spot at Amplify 2025 today by visiting rayray.com/amplify. That's rey.com/amplify today.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jamie Butters with Kellen Walker. Homegrown electric vehicle makers just getting started in the U.S. market should get the maximum time possible to enjoy the EV tax credit now on the chopping block in Congress. That's the view of Mark Winterhoff, who leads one of those upstarts, Lucid Motors, as its interim CEO. Republicans in Congress are debating 2 versions of a budget bill. The Senate proposal ends EV incentives within 180 days for all automakers. The House version extends credits through 2026 for EV makers that have yet to sell 200,000 EVs. Winterhoff and I talked yesterday about the budget bill, the Gravity crossover, and the state of the EV market. I reached him at the company's headquarters in Newark, California. Mark Winterhoff, welcome to Daily Drive.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on. You've been interim CEO now for several months. Do you want to be the permanent CEO? Is the board actively searching? Where does that stand?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm incredibly humbled to have this opportunity to be in this role for now. And I'm focusing on, operational improvements in the company and, all the things that we have to do right now to be successful. I have to admit, I don't actually have time to think about whether I want to be CEO. I will basically have either, results speak for me, or it can also very well be that because there is a search going on, that there is another person better suited, and then I will step aside and do what I did before. Yeah? So I'm not here, focusing on running for CEO. I'm really focusing on conducting the business and make sure that we are successful.
Is there a time frame that the board has set out?
There's no defined time frame. There is an active search going on right now. That's definitely happening, but there's no time frame at this point.
Gotcha. So tell me, we've all been waiting so eagerly for the Gravity. I'm curious how that's progressing. Production started late last year, but we didn't see any registrations in April's data. What's the ramp up looking like from your perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to start with the feedback that we get for the car, both in the media but also from the customers that already have the vehicle. Actually, even in Q2, there were more customers that we made deliveries to, and as we speak, we're also delivering additional cars. And the feedback is phenomenal. The media response that we had, I don't know whether you had the chance to look at them, was absolutely stellar. I have to admit, in all of my 25 years, working in the automotive industry, I've never seen that positive feedback, from all of the outlets here in the US that were involved, and even in Europe with similar statements. So that's amazing. We also had last week, we actually had an event in San Diego where the EV Expo there, where also existing owners of the Gravity came and also joined the crowd and were very positive about the vehicle. So that's very good. And we are continuing to ramp up our Gravity in production. And as many others, I mean, the industry right now is in a difficult situation with a lot of challenges, supply chain issues, but then tariffs come on top, and then other things like the dispute with China on rare earths and all those kind of things. The whole industry is grappling with this, so we are slower than we want to be. But slowly and surely, we are adding more and more new customers right now. And as we speak, actually, we have a couple of deliveries going on.
So, is it fair to say that trade tensions, both from the U.S. side and from the China side, maybe hampered the ramp up a little?
Well, I mean, it hampers the whole industry. I mean, we're not really unique, to be quite honest. I mean, you've seen other players in the market stop production completely for a certain period of time, mainly in Europe. But I also heard that Ford recently had to stop production for more than a week completely because of issues. So the current turmoil, I would say, doesn't really help on top of the things that we have to do in order to secure the perfect quality that we want to have for all of our vehicles that we are delivering.
It's been a tough market, especially this past year or so for EVs, and especially for startups, even with innovative products such as Lucids. Do you ever worry that this is a sign that Americans just aren't ready for EVs yet?
No. Short answer. I honestly believe it's the typical path that adoptions of, let's say, new technologies take. It's always the case that it starts relatively slow. Then we run into a big hype. Like a couple of years ago, everybody claimed, "Oh my gosh, we will stop building ICEs in a couple of years," and then you fall into this, deep valley in the trough. And I think right now we are exactly there and are already going back out of it, where you normally then go back to normal business. So I'm expecting in a few years from now that we will continue on that trajectory. EV is the solution for the future. We are 100% convinced about that. I'm 100% convinced about that. And the fact that we are EV only is actually a good thing for us because we are completely focusing, whereas others have to right now make capital decisions about, are we going back to ICE completely? Are we going to hybrids? Are we going to EVs? And you see a lot of announcements where players are either discontinuing or postponing EVs, which in the end will only help us because at that time when they then have to come to market, it might be too late. And the other thing also, when you say, okay, it was a tough market last year, also there I would say yes and no. Because if you look at our performance last year, let's not forget that we have only played up until end of last year in one market segment, luxury sedan market segment. And we have been, in the second half of last year, the best-selling EV in that sector in the United States. It's actually maybe not widely known because the sector as such is not that big. But we were outselling established EV players. We were outselling a lot of very renowned companies from my fellow country where I was born and raised. And so we are actually in our segment in a good shape. we just have to deal with a segment that is not that big. Now we have the gravity on top of it. So I'm very positive about the trajectory that we are going to have in the next couple of months and then years.
It seems that so far, along with exciting product, the federal tax credits and especially on the leases have been really effective in helping get more Americans to adopt EVs or at least give them a try. And now we've got, the House and the Senate looking at different approaches for ending the EV tax credit. What are your thoughts on some of the policy proposals that have been floated out there? The House has said they want to keep an opening for companies that have sold fewer than 200,000 EVs to continue to have access to the credits through 2026. Is that something you'll hope will be part of the final budget bill?
Yeah, I mean, we would support this for a very simple reason, because think about it. It's widely known we haven't yet sold 200,000 EVs, right? So, but many others in the past have, and they all had that credit. And that was, something that brought them to the situation where they are right now. And why would you now change it and basically make it very difficult for new players in the market like we are, that happen to even produce completely in the United States, but you still would make it difficult for them actually to compete, because they haven't had this economic of scale that others that have been earlier already had. They had the benefit of those credits. In particular, with the example of the 30D credit, which is a manufacturing credit, which basically supports that you are building a product here in the United States. In my opinion, counterintuitive to say, hey, why would that actually be ended? Because it's actually supporting exactly what the current administration is looking for. And we made that decision already years ago to actually vertically integrate extensively here in the United States. So yeah, I'm a proponent that it stays as much as it can, and also the cap for up to 200,000 is, in my opinion, also a fair point, because others that have enjoyed that, at some point you need to be able to live without incentives. I mean, that's totally clear. And for others that are already on a different level when it comes to economics of scale and the learning curve, then at some point it needs to stop.
It seems like if there's, as we come out of that trough and into renewed growth, it seems like, crossovers and sort of that $50,000 and less sort of target would be a key segment. Is that kind of car, maybe the next generation Lucid, the kind of car that can really succeed without taxpayer support?
Yeah, I mean, that's our very, very big focus right now. It's publicly known that we are planning to bring our midsize end of next year and then ramping up in the year after. That's exactly in that spot, in roundabout 50,000, maybe a little bit below, and then some versions maybe a little bit higher. And it's for us not only, by the way, one vehicle. So we are working on a midsize platform, and we have concrete plans for 3 top hats already for that, and 2 of which will actually launch relatively close to each other early, and then a third one will come a little bit later. But yes, that is the product that we are really focused on right now, because that will then give us also the demand and the volume, where the majority basically of the sales also happening right now in the market.
To the extent that the federal government wants to support domestic EV manufacturers, what do you think is the most important method? What's the biggest weakness? Is it helping with, EV sales credits and lease support, or is it more on the EV and battery manufacturing, or is it more helping to build out public charging? Where do you see as the most important area of need?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I would have said public charging, because that was always the topic that people, brought up. Oh, I don't know, when I do my one long trip in the year, how can I get there? Which is, interesting, because typically people don't drive every week, 400 or 500 or even more miles. But that was a big topic in the past. Now it is, since we are in that trough, as we just discussed, I think that, making sure that it is affordable for the consumer until the economics of scale are kicking in and you can actually bring the price of the EVs further down in order to, then basically, compete with other, 100-year-old technologies that are obviously much, much further ahead. So supporting this for a certain period of time is important. And I think, with everything, with the focus of the current administration, supporting that we are actually building those cars here in the United States is very important as well. And we also need to be clear that, I know tariffs are designed to do that, exactly that, to support, let's say, that more is built here. But at the same time, it will make cars more expensive for our consumers. And when it comes to EVs, I'm not necessarily sure that's the best way of doing it. It's more, really about, hey, supporting the manufacturers to get along this growth path in order then to be able to offer it at prices that make sense. Because in the end, every company needs to make money. We're not here as a nonprofit, so we need to also think about how do we sustain our business. We cannot only continue or drive sales by incentives that are just simply not feasible, and that is something that the tariffs actually will very much likely even make more complicated. So far we haven't seen price increases, but we're also monitoring for ourselves, how can we make this still viable for us? And I'm expecting the whole industry in the second half of this year to make changes in their pricing structure.
Mark Winterhoff, Interim CEO of Lucid. Pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jamie.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jamie Butters.
And I'm Kellen Walker. You can get the latest news on EV startups, infrastructure spending, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com.
Come back tomorrow to hear Roger Penske reflect on his career as he becomes an Automotive News Centennial Award honoree. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.